My name is Lázsló Andor, and I'm a senior fellow at FEPS, which is the Foundation for European Progressive Studies. I think it's a major step forward that the European Union in the recent years agreed on the European Pillar of Social Rights. But indeed, the question is, how can we go forward beyond a non-binding declaration of principles? I think these documents, these 20 principles, are very important for the stakeholders, trade unions, civil society organizations, who have been working on the EU social agenda and look for possibilities to make a change in the reality, in the real world. And I think what could follow and what should follow is a social action plan, perhaps in order to establish a European social union, which doesn't only help with advice and recommendations, but also with the capacity to deliver on strong welfare safety nets and improving working conditions. This is the critical question, because in the recent years, we saw the EU producing a lot of jobs, and the employment rate has been increasing, unemployment has been falling in most of the member states, but it's a critical issue how the working conditions develop in the member states, what is going to be the quality of the work in the future. It's also an important point regarding the pillar, that originally, when they launched the debate, they thought about focusing on the Eurozone. Also because inside the Eurozone, there used to be, at the time of the crisis, a major divergence in terms of social conditions and social outcomes between the north and the south of the Eurozone. I think it's very important, especially for our region, Central Europe and Central Eastern Europe and the Balkans, that at the end of the discussion, they agreed that all EU countries should be involved. The principles of the social pillar should apply to everybody, which simply represents a common endeavor for maintaining and improving a European social model. Yes, how we can strengthen social policy, we have to look at three instruments, three directions. And these three are legislation, like EU directives to protect health and safety at the workplace, for example, or protect the working time and protect the free time, the leisure time of working people. It's a policy coordination where the EU, on the basis of sound analysis, can come forward with recommendations to improve the national practices by spreading the best existing models. For example, in recent years, there was an implementation of an EU youth guarantee based on good models like Austria and Finland, which managed to keep youth unemployment low and provide advice and training and employment for young people with much greater efficiency than other countries. And the third area where the EU social dimension can be strengthened is the budget. The EU budget, as we know, is relatively small. It's only 1% of the EU GDP. But it does help with social investment. It does help with investment in human capital. It does help with tackling material deprivation in countries where this is an elementary need, and without an EU support, it would not happen. So we have to look at all three aspects, how in the next phase these tools could be used to turn the pillar of social rights into a reality. The digital transformation is one of the greatest challenges, right? So it's transforming the labor market. It's transforming how services are provided in various countries, in various economies. And what we need to look at is the risk that new forms of employment would open up little channels out of social security, where EU law, social law would not apply, where social security would not be provided if you are, for example, a platform worker, as opposed to a more standard employee in industry or services or in the public sector. So this is where legislation has to come in. You can't always legislate, yeah, right? So you can't just have a legislative focus. Sometimes when the change is inevitable, it's important to use the financial instruments to help people preparing for new types of jobs which require new types of skills. So it very much depends on the specific case, whether you need more legislation at the European Union level, or you need a kind of fiscal capacity to face the challenges of the new period. I think it's a very good question, and I will mention some examples. But let me just start by highlighting that indeed the social dimension of the so-called new member states, right, the East, is much weaker. Why? Because unionization is weaker, social dialogue, collective bargaining is weaker, and as a result of this, minimum wages are lagging behind the average wage in this region more than in the West, and there are many other consequences as well. This is also linked to a kind of philosophy which is a legacy of the 1990s, when people assume that you only need to generate economic growth, and then the benefits of the economic growth will be shared by the whole society. You don't particularly need to make an effort to improve distribution. Now, after such a long time, I think we have to conclude that we need stronger social policies at the workplaces, but also outside, in order to ensure that economic convergence is also coupled with social convergence. And we do not allow inequalities to widen. And if the question is whether the East can bring up some good examples to demonstrate to the West that we are also innovative in this area, well, maybe there are some good examples. We always mention, for example, Estonia as a very innovative country, which also started to be innovative in the social side, and they started to experiment with free public transport, for example, which I think is a very important public service for urban citizens. And let's see how it helps to improve the social reality in Estonia, which could be perhaps a model also for others. Let me mention another example, which a lot of people thought would be counterintuitive: the boost to child benefits by the current Polish government. We know this is not a progressive government, but I think it has some significance that they realized that in order to fight poverty, help families, help children in need, they have to ensure that the minimum wage sorry, not the minimum wage, but the child benefit. Right? They have to ensure that the child benefit maintains its value and improves to help those who otherwise cannot have a better market income. So these are examples when I think Eastern countries can also achieve something which others do not expect. And I think I should also add that there are some specific challenges which this region has, which others do not have and may not appreciate sufficiently. I'm thinking about the conditions of the Roma minorities. The Czech Republic, but also even more Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, have very significant Roma minorities, which often suffer various forms of discrimination or bias against them in the labor market, for example, inferior quality of education and social services in places where they live. And I think it's also important to find and highlight good examples where something positive, some social experiment took place, for example, by bringing kindergarten or bringing social services to towns or villages or districts where the majority is Roma, and to demonstrate how such developments, also by using EU funds, can help tackling social disintegration. I think this is a crucial issue because of the demography and the economic and social situation in these countries, that with EU financial help, these sometimes very alarming trends can be turned around. These positive examples exist, but it's important to find them and show them in order to have a kind of multiplication effect in the next period.